Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story this hour. The Russia-Ukraine war enters its second year with no end in sight. It has been often discussed that the war did not go according to the Russian plan. But was it a part of the Ukrainian plans or even their imaginations in the beginning that the war would ever enter its second year? So how did Ukraine manage to fight Russia for one whole year? First, let me take you back to February of 2022. How did the Russian and Ukrainian positions look back then? In the next 1 minute, we will bring you the numbers. Now, back in February of 2022, Russia had a military spending of over $61 billion. In comparison, Ukraine had only $5.9 billion in its defense budget. Talking of active personnel, Russia had 900,000 strong military manpower, while Ukraine had a little over 200,000. Russia also had a huge edge in the number of reservists. And this is what their artillery compared. Russia also had the edge in a number of tanks with around 12,500, while Ukraine had a little over 2,500. Now, Russia also had the edge over Ukraine in a number of attack helicopters. And finally, fighter aircraft. Russia had over 1,500 of them, while Ukraine didn't have even 100. We remind you that these were the numbers from February of last year. So the question is, how did an outgunned Ukraine manage to fight the mighty Russian forces for so long? First and foremost, the answer lies in Western support to Ukraine. Now, from the beginning of the war, Ukraine has been demanding material support from the West, and its demands have often been met. As per the latest data available by February of 2022, now this year Ukraine has received over $135 billion in aid. Over $55 billion of this amount came in military aid. This alone has put Ukrainian defense spending for this year at par with Russia's. And moreover, as of the 19th of January of 2023, Ukraine has been provided with military equipment by more than 30 countries. This includes over 5,000 shoulder-launched weapons designed to destroy tanks with a single shot. Talking about tanks, in total, close to 300 tanks have been pledged by the West for Ukraine. This includes Washington's Abrams, Berlin's Leopards, and London's Challenger 2s. Moreover, the Pentagon has already provided Ukraine with more than 2,000 combat vehicles. This includes over 450 mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles and more than 1,200 Humvees. Talking about artillery, Ukraine has received over 10,000 supplies from the West. This includes howitzers, javelins, and other surface-to-air missiles. Apart from this, Ukraine has also received an unspecified number of drones from the West.
You see the Russian government, they are all talking about the fact that they aren't just fighting Ukraine, they're fighting NATO. And that's why they're losing. I mean, even if we imagine a ceasefire at some point in the coming months on the ground in Ukraine, Russia will still be dealing with a much stronger Ukraine militarily, an expanded NATO with forward deployed troops.
So it comes as no surprise that Ukrainian forces held off the Russian attack for so long. Now, for more on this, we are being joined by Major John Spencer, who is the chairman of Urban Warfare Studies at the Madison Policy Forum and a military analyst. Thank you for being with us, Major. Now, as the war enters its second year, if we look back, how would you assess the current situation of the war?
I mean, I would assess it as coming at great price to the Ukrainian people. This has not been a war of two militaries, and while those numbers were fascinating, it's not the Russian military versus the Ukrainian military, it's the Russian military against the Ukrainian people. And the price that Russia has cost on Ukraine has been higher than I think anybody could have imagined, on the national infrastructure, on the deportation and genocide of the people and the babies and the mass graves. And that's why this is really hard to say, like, what has Russia achieved in a year? There are two different wars being fought in Ukraine. One, a war of conquest by Russia to try to take over Ukraine as a nation, and in the other, a war of survival by Ukraine, in what we call a just war, just in their desire not to be eradicated, and that's why they have such Western support, which has allowed them to survive. But even without that Western support, you don't fight a 40 million person country with a small Russian army that has been sent into Ukraine.
Clearly an aggressor and an aggressee. The West has been supporting Ukraine with almost everything that it has requested. They are now waiting for the green light on the long-range missiles and fighter jets. Do you think that the West will provide these, and how much of a difference will it make?
Yes, I think they will, and it will make a difference. Just like we saw earlier, the long-range rocket systems had an immediate impact on the battlefield. I mean, all war is politics, though. So while we look at the battlefield and the minor changes, Russia has no path to achieving its stated political goals. Ukraine has gotten supplies. I'd argue that they've gotten a very fraction of what the West can provide. If you look at the military spending of all the major donors to Ukraine, it's been a very small fraction. It's been incremental, very episodic by weapon type. So yeah, the rockets like ATACMS and the jets will help. Ukraine keeping all of its supplies flowing will allow it to achieve its victory eventually, until Putin makes a decision to stop fighting. A ceasefire wouldn't really achieve that. Putin still has a political goal which the world recognizes as illegal. It violates the UN Charter for an aggressor to try to take a smaller country by force just because they want to.